morning, all. Suburban Sentinel here, along with my little friend Nigel the office cat, who I believe I improperly introduced as Nero in the last video. Sorry about that, buddy. Anyway, we're coming to you once again from very deep inside the Arabian Peninsula. And today we want to talk a little bit, or at least I want to talk a little bit, about a prepping related issue called decision making. A lot of what we do in prepping is decision making. Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? What are we going to buy? What are our strategies for surviving and thriving? And many folks get caught up in the decision making process. They get tangled up in analysis, and oftentimes what we collectively do is not do anything. We get so wrapped up in trying to make a decision on what to do, we never actually execute anything. So let's talk a little bit about how to overcome what we generally call analysis paralysis. The inability to make a decision can hurt you. And I want to use my dear friend John as an example. And this is not about prepping, this is about transportation. My friend John is in his third year out here in the desert hinterlands. And for transportation, you basically have two options. You can either buy a car or rent a car. And for the last almost 3 years, John has been renting a car. So it costs him approximately 500 US dollars, or the equivalent of 500 US dollars, to rent this god-awful putt-putt of a pissant car. But it does include all insurance and any other associated fees. So this is John's last year. At the end of the spring, he is headed elsewhere, but he will have completed 3 full years here, during which time he rented the car at a cost of 18,000 US dollars. Now, again, this did include all maintenance, insurance, and associated fees. Why did he rent for 3 years? Well, quite frankly, he planned on being here at least 3 years and wanted to buy a car, but he got so caught up in the decision-making process, analyzing all the different types of cars available and the costs, he just flat out never bought one. Now, the car he rented for 3 years, or will have rented for 3 years, at a cost of $18,000, he could have purchased outright for $12,000. So the cost differential, 18 to rent it, 12,000 to buy it. Now, of course, buying it does not include insurance and maintenance. But let's assume that he would have spent 4,000 US dollars insurance and maintenance on the car. Now that's highballing. Car insurance here is not very expensive, and on a new car there at least should be very little maintenance, at least out of pocket costs. So even assuming arguendo that he would have spent 4,000 bucks on insurance and maintenance, he's still down 2,000 US dollars. Now, factor in also when he turns his rental in, he will get nothing other than a paper receipt written in Arabic that he cannot read. Had he bought the car outright, he would get the residual value after 3 years. And again, being conservative, the car he rented, had he purchased it, would have been worth about 7,000 US dollars at least. So when you net everything out, renting versus buying, it costs John about 9,000 US dollars more to rent the car when you figure in all the costs. And for no other reason, he had the money to buy a car outright that he just dithered. Right? He couldn't make up his mind, and so he just rented a, be honest with you, a crappy shitbox for 3 years, and it cost him $9,000 more. Now, John is not a dumb guy. In point of fact, he has a master's degree in economics from a rather prestigious university. However, his inability to make a decision has hurt him to the tune of 9 or 10,000 bucks. So that is just one example where analysis paralysis can hurt you, or at least hurt your pocketbook. We want to be thorough in our decision-making processes. We want to be able to take the time and use and evaluate all of the information available and make those good decisions. But also, we have time limits. We need to be able to execute and move forward. Remember that for every minute you spend dithering on a decision, you are not working on something else or not enjoying your life. And we don't want to do that, right? Dithering will get you basically nowhere. You don't want to be in a position where, let's assume that there's an SHTF scenario and you need to be able to filter water, and for the last 6 months you have been dithering and have narrowed it down to 3 different water filtration systems that you have in catalogs, but you never actually bought one. You will be jackass of the month, perhaps even jackass of the year. Executing at some point is particularly important in prepping. I mean, there's so much information out there for different things. There's information overload. And yet, for prepping, we are trying to plan for unknown events. Nobody knows what the face of the next big emergency will look like. So we need to achieve a balance. We need to avoid analysis paralysis. We want to be thorough, but we want to, at some point, execute and move forward. So how do we avoid analysis paralysis? Well, I have a couple of different strategies. First thing is take each major issue you are facing and break it down into bite-sized pieces. In other words, if you have a big issue, break it into a variety of different questions. Say, for example, you live in the suburbs and you have city water, but you are concerned that the supply of city water could be interrupted in case of emergency. So, of course, you want to figure out a means of making sure you and your family have potable water at your homestead. Well, that is a big question. How do we do that? Well, first question would be how? Should we store water on site? Should we dig a well? You have all these different options. And then write each question down. Write each one down. Publish or perish. Write your questions and your sub-questions down. It's really important, and it will help you. The next thing is take each question before you try to answer it and establish your priorities. And what I mean by that is come up with between 3 and 5 really important things to consider in making the decision. So, for example, the sub-question, should I dig a well? One of your priorities would be, of course, what is the water quality and volume available on or underneath my property? Another priority, what will it cost to dig a well versus storing a significant amount of potable water on the property, and things like this. Limit yourself to between 3 and 5 priorities. Any more, and people tend to get overwhelmed. Finally, after you have researched your issue, broken it down into bite-sized pieces, and have individual questions and perhaps sub-questions, right, and established your priorities and written them down, is set a reasonable deadline for making each decision. One of the reasons people dither for so long is that they have these open-ended projects with no deadline. Impose upon yourself a reasonable deadline for coming up with a decision. Is this decision-making strategy foolproof? Does it guarantee great results every time? Of course not. That is simply not the way of the world. Nothing is perfect. However, if we find a reasonable balance between thorough analysis and prompt execution, overall, your decision-making process and avoiding analysis paralysis will be more successful. Thanks for watching. In the next episode, I'll probably run through a sample decision-making process of an issue my wife and I just had on a prepping-related issue. This is the Suburban Sentinel, and I don't know where Nigel went to, but he's here somewhere. Please thumbs up, share, and subscribe if you like what you see. Questions, enlightening comments, and differing opinions are always welcome. Prep and be safe, everybody.